Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben, and in this video you're going to learn 10 really useful, and I mean extremely useful, English idioms for your speaking. These are quite advanced English idioms, and there's no particular theme that we're looking at today. The only thing that these idioms have in common is that they are extremely useful and we use them on a regular basis. They're used in everyday English. So let's get straight to it with the first one, which is to take a leaf out of someone's book. Now this means to imitate or to copy something good that someone does. So it's always positive. It's about imitating something positive. You would never take a leaf out of someone's book if they do something negative or something bad. So let's look at the example. You should take the leaf out of your brother's book and go to the library to study on Saturday night. So you can imagine this is a mother who has two sons, let's say, and one of them is very studious and goes to the library to study on Saturday night, and the other one maybe goes out to have fun with his friends. And his mother is saying, you should take a leaf out of your brother's book. You should imitate your brother, do what your brother does, and go to the library instead of going out, for example. Should you take a leaf out of anyone's book? Do you know anyone who does something that you feel you should do, that you should imitate? Think of that and put an example in the comments. And moving on to number 2 now, it's a tall order. A tall order. Now this is any request or task that is difficult to fulfill, something very difficult to do, basically. It may not be impossible, but it's just very difficult. So let's look at an example. Passing your C2 proficiency Cambridge English exam without any preparation is a very tall order. So again, I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible to pass the C2 proficiency exam without preparation, but it's very difficult. It's a tall order. It's almost impossible. And moving on to number 3 now, it's days are numbered. So we would say that someone or something's days are numbered. And that means that that person or that thing will not exist for much longer. So when we're referring to a person, it could mean that they're going to die, but usually it's not that extreme. Usually we're just saying that they're not going to exist in a particular state or in a particular context. So you have to be a little bit careful with this one, but usually the context is enough to know what you're saying. So the example sentence, the president's days are numbered in the White House. So I didn't want to specify which president here because you may be watching this video in 10 years or 20 years in the future, but the president's days are numbered in the White House. That doesn't mean that the president's going to die. What I'm saying here is that the president's time in the White House is not going to last much longer. There is an election coming up and he's probably going to lose. So his days are numbered. Okay, moving on to number 4 now, it's hare-brained. Hare-brained. Have you heard of this one before? Well, we use hare-brained to describe a scheme or a plan or an idea. So a hare-brained scheme is a very common collocation. And it refers to a foolish or sort of unrealistic scheme, plan or idea. So a hare is an animal very similar to a rabbit, but bigger. And for some reason, this animal was chosen to describe a foolish or unrealistic plan or scheme. So let's look at the example. The government's hare-brained scheme to lower pollution levels is bound to fail. So this is suggesting that the scheme, the idea, the plan of the government to lower pollution levels is foolish. It's unrealistic. It's just not going to work. It's impractical. It's bound to fail. So when we say it's bound to fail, it means it's certain to fail. And idiom number 5 is the proof of the pudding. Or the full idiom is actually the proof of the pudding is in the eating, but we don't usually need to say the full idiom. The context is usually enough. And this means that the true value or quality of something can only be judged through experience, so through real experience. So it's not enough just to talk about something or to tell somebody that this thing is good or what you are going to do is good. It has to be judged through real experience. So again, you'll understand it with the example. Jane claims to be the fastest runner at school, but the proof of the pudding will be the race on Saturday. right? So Jane she tells everybody that she's the fastest runner at school. But those are just words, right? We don't know. We have to see through a real experience. So there's a race on Saturday, and if she wins the race, that will prove that she is the fastest runner. And the next one, number 6, is to get the wrong end of the stick. To get the wrong end of the stick. Now, this is a particularly useful one for people who are speaking a second language, because it often happens. There are often times where you may need to use this expression, to get the wrong end of the stick, because it means to misunderstand or misinterpret what someone has said. So this can happen between two people who speak the same language, but often if one or both the people are speaking a second language, there can be some confusion and somebody might misunderstand or misinterpret what the other person has said, so they can get the wrong end of the stick. So let's look at the example. Sorry, I think you've got the wrong end of the stick. I wasn't disagreeing with you. On the contrary, I think you're right. Okay, so somebody's having a conversation and they realize that the person they're speaking to thinks that they're disagreeing with them, but in actual fact, it's the opposite. So they have to mention that, right? Oh, sorry, I think you've got the wrong end of the stick. So I think you're misunderstanding me. You're misinterpreting what I'm saying. So this is a nice and polite way to clarify what is being said. So, you don't continue the conversation with this misunderstanding. So a very useful idiom there. Okay, moving on to number 7 now. It's to line one's pockets. To line one's pockets. So you can line your pockets, I can line my pockets, he can line his pockets. And that means to make money, but dishonestly. So it has this kind of negative connotation that you're making money, but in a dishonest way. So let's look at the example. The corrupt politician was lining his pockets with money from campaign donations. So people were giving him money, but for the campaign in particular. But this corrupt politician, was putting the money into his pockets for his own use. So he was lining his pockets. As I said, it's not just earning, it has this dishonest connotation. Okay, this next one is probably my favorite, but it's quite difficult to explain. So concentrate and bear with me. It's take the biscuit, to take the biscuit. And this is a particularly British English idiom. I don't think it's used so much in American English. But it's used to express the idea that something is the most extreme. So it depends what you have already mentioned in the sentence or the previous sentence, but it's really emphasizing that it's the most extreme. So it could be the best, the worst, the most annoying, the most surprising, the most boring, the most interesting. But it's a great idiom to really emphasize, as we'll see from the example. I've been to a few boring meetings before, but that one takes the biscuit. So what I'm saying here is that, yes, I've been to boring meetings. It's quite normal to go to boring meetings, but that one was the most boring. There have never been any more boring meetings than that one. So it takes the biscuit. You can imagine the biscuit being the award. So you win the award for being the most boring meeting ever. So it takes the biscuit. So have fun coming up with examples for that one. And the next one, number 9, is really useful too. It's to put someone on a pedestal. To put someone on a pedestal. So this means to admire someone greatly. In fact, you admire them so much as to think that they are perfect. So you really think they're great. For whatever reason, you just think they're amazing. So let's look at the example. We shouldn't put Instagram influencers on a pedestal. They have their faults and weaknesses like everyone else. So we shouldn't put influencers on a pedestal, so we shouldn't admire them too much. They're not perfect, like anybody. I'm not criticizing influencers here, but it's just to say that perhaps some people put them on a pedestal, they admire them a bit too much, and they're not perfect. They have their faults and weaknesses like everyone in the world. And the last one, number 10, I have a really apt one to finish here, and it's to call it a day. To call it a day. And we use this idiom to signal that it's time to stop doing an activity. So maybe you've been doing a job or some kind of task for some time, and you decide that's it, we've got to finish, we've got to call it a day. So we often say, let's call it a day. We've been working on this dance routine for hours now. Let's call it a day. Okay, so the activity here is practicing this dance routine, and maybe you're getting tired or bored, and somebody decides it's time to stop, so they say, let's call it a day, let's finish. Okay, so those are all my idioms for today, so let's call it a day. Let's finish this video. I hope you found it useful. As I said, come up with your own examples. Hit the like button if you found this useful, because apparently it helps the algorithm and you'll be helping me out. And I'll see you very soon for another video.